Hello, dear viewers. Today I'm going to be talking about Indian nationalism in general. I'm going to be talking about the three protests that have happened in the Modi's second term. First, the CAA protests, then the farm law protests, then the Bridge Bhushan protests. Let's begin. Welcome to Global Nationalism. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today, I'm going to be talking about the wrestlers' protests that are going on right now against the Wrestling Federation Association of India president, Bhushan Singh. And I'm going to compare them to the previous two protest movements that occurred in Modi's second term, the CAA protests and the farm law protests. I want to show the similarities between them and the differences and uh, give my opinion and stance on where what I my view about the wrestlers' protests. Let's get started. So first, I'll start with the Citizenship Amendment Act protests. The Citizenship Amendment Act protests occurred after the Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA, was enacted by the Government of India on 12 December 2019. The move sparked a widespread national and overseas ongoing protests against the Act and its associated proposals of the National Register of Citizens. The protests first began in Assam and spread swiftly in other states such as Delhi, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, and Tripura on 4th December 2019. Protests broke out rapidly across the country, although the concerns of the protesters varied. It amended the Indian Citizenship Act to accept illegal immigrants who are Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Parsi, Buddhist, and Christian from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, and who entered India before 2014 following the religious persecutions. The bill does not mention Muslims and other communities who fled from the same or other neighboring countries. Refugees from Sri Lankan Tamils in India, Rohingyas from Myanmar, and Tibetan refugees are also not mentioned in the bill. And then the proposed National Register of Citizens will be an official record of all legal citizens of India. Individuals would need to provide a prescribed set of documents before a specified cutoff date to be included in it. So this shows that that Modi is trying to give refuge to illegal immigrants from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, who are the minorities of these countries, the religious minorities, because they are discriminated against in their home countries, which are Islamic countries, which is true that uh, these countries treat non-Muslims as second-class citizens. They do not have the same rights as Muslims in these countries, so they are discriminated. There's also persecution, large scale violence against them. Therefore, I agree with this act that they should be given citizenship, although I think that it now has to be updated to be not just before 2014, but even after. And a national register of citizens is necessary because the government needs to know how many people in India are legal citizens, and by doing this, it can also find out who are the illegal immigrants of India and can deport them. Now, what is the status now? The MHA has deferred making CAA rules, seeks another extension. This was published on last year, January, and the act was passed in December 2019, but it has not been implemented since the rules to be formulated under the law have not yet been notified. The act was notified in the Gazette in January 2020, CAA, and this makes that it's just not been implemented. It's been delayed. So therefore, I think when it needs to be amended to be more current, more recent date, maybe 2020. I'm not sure. 2021 Indian farmers' protest was a protest against three farm acts that were passed by the Parliament of India in September 2020. The acts, often called the Farm Bills, had been described as anti-farmer laws by many farmer unions and politicians from the opposition who said that it would leave farmers at the mercy of corporates. And India is largely self-sufficient in food grain production, having welfare schemes. Hunger and nutrition remain serious issues, with India ranking as one of the worst countries in the world in food security parameters. So, yeah, this is basically the government said that the agriculture system in India needs to change, and so they introduced these laws. Uh, and what these laws are, that they're called first the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act. This expands the scope of trade areas of farmers' produce from select areas to any place of production, collection, and aggregation. This also allows electronic trading and e-commerce of scheduled farmers' produce. It prohibits state governments from levying any market fee, cess, or levy on farmers. Farmers create a framework for contract farming through an agreement between a farmer and a buyer before the production of any farm produces, and the Essential Commodities Amendment Act allows for the center to regulate certain food items in the course of extraordinary situations like war or famine. It requires that imposition of any stock limit on agricultural produce be based on price rise. So basically, all these acts were liberalizing the farm sector, and I agree with them. But people protested, and I support the right to protest, but I'll explain my problems with the protests later. And what were the farmers' unions demanding? First, they wanted the farm laws to be repealed. Then they made other demands: convene a special parliament session to repeal the farm laws, make MSP and state procurements of crops a legal right, implement Swaminathan panel report, and peg MSP at least 50% more than the weighted average cost of production, the repeal of Commission on Air Quality Management in NCR and the joining Ordinance 2020, abolishing the Electricity Ordinance 2020, that these laws have been repealed. On 29 November 2021, both houses of the Indian Parliament passed the Farm Laws Repeal Bill 2021 by voice vote. While there were no objections to the bill, the opposition objected to passing the bill without debate. The repeal bill was signed by the President of India 2 days later. Later in March 2022, a high powered expert panel constituted by the Supreme Court found out that 86% of the farmer organizations representing not 38.3 million farmers represented the farm laws. This just pisses me off that this was, even though that majority of farmers organizations agreed with it, it was still had to be repealed because of the protests. It shows weakness on the part of the government. I think this was the wrong decision. They should have kept it. And now the Bharatiya Kisan Union leader Rakesh Tikait on Wednesday said an agitation bigger than the one against now repealed farm laws will have to be launched for a legal guarantee on a minimum support price. So you can see that these people are just protesting for the sake of protesting. Now, as far as the current protests against by the wrestlers, in January 2023, Indian wrestlers began protesting for investigations into the allegations of sexual harassment of female wrestlers by BJP MP Brij Bhushan Saran Singh during his tenure as the president of the Wrestling Federation of India. The female wrestler complainants accused Bhushan of groping, touching breasts and navels without consent, stalking, intimidation, and demanding sexual favors in exchange for professional help, all of which has led to a shared sense of fear and trauma among the women wrestlers. Bhushan has denied all allegations in front of a government appointed committee. I think that this is a serious issue, but and I hope that if these women were indeed victimized in this manner, they do get justice. But I want to wait for the investigation to be done before I make a proper comment. The sports minister, Anurag Thakur, has asked political parties not to politicize the wrestlers' protest. He lists several demands fulfilled, says action will be taken when charge sheet is filed against Brij Bhushan. And he says that they are handling this issue very sensitively. Whatever the players demanded, we are doing all those things. The demanded inquiry we get done. They asked for FIR, and Delhi police filed it. They approached Supreme Court, which asked them to approach the district magistrate. They demanded not to let Wrestling Federation of India officials be barred from performing any duties. That demand was also fulfilled. They demanded a subcommittee, and IOA made the subcommittee. The trials are being done by the subcommittee. Delhi police is investigating the matter. Whatever they demanded has been fulfilled. And one of the complainants was a minor wrestler. The father said that he had filed a false complaint out of anger. This was something said in anger, and this was because he wanted revenge because his daughter was overlooked for selection during camp. And he said that 3 to 4 days ago, my daughter and I went to the police station of Patiala House Court. One thing has changed in 2022. They deliberately made my daughter lose the match. I don't know which match this was. He says that we were heartbroken. We have two houses, and I had to sell one of my houses to ensure that my daughter can practice wrestling. According to the father, his ward had missed out on their selection to the Indian team and alleged that the referee had intentionally made his daughter lose. So this was just a personal vendetta, not an actual case of molestation. So that's fake news, a fake complaint. And Anurag Thakur also said that the probe against Brij Bhushan Saran Singh will be completed by June 15th, and Wrestling Federation of India polls will be by June 30th. That the ongoing probe against the WFI chief will be completed by June 15th, and the charge sheet will be submitted. And wrestlers Bajrang Punia and Sakshi Malik reached Thakur's residence in the national capital, responded positively to a call for discussion by the government on the demands and issues put forward by the grapplers during the protest. So I what I think of these protests is that they were political. They were just anti-Modi protests. They weren't genuine protests and against some law, some genuine grievance. No, these were just political, aimed at hurting the BJP and making them look bad. There was I now, of course, some of the people in these protests. I'm sure most of the people in the protests genuinely believed in what they were doing, but I also think that the leaders of the protests were using it for political purposes, and that they I and what I condemn even more than the politicization is the violence that occurred. There were riots during the CAA protests, stone pelting. During the farmer protests, there was a riot on Republic Day of 2021. There was an execution by some Nihang Sikhs of somebody who had committed sacrilege in Punjab. Now, I'm not saying that I support sacrilege in and against any religion, but I don't think that anybody should be killed for that. And yeah, I think we're seeing that again in this wrestlers protest. Originally, they had not allowed politicians like Brinda Karat and the Congress from joining them, but now they've joined them. So I think that the original push to make it not political was just a ploy to fool people, and now they're showing their true colors. And yeah, I disbelieve the wrestlers? No, there's no. I don't uh, think like that. I wait for the courts and the law to give their stand. So I don't disbelieve a complainant, but I also don't believe them immediately. I'm waiting for evidence, and it must be said that as of today, 11th June 2023, there's been no evidence given by them in the public, and so we'll have to wait for the charge sheet. But I don't think that he should be arrested before evidence is given, before a charge sheet is filed. There has to be some proof before, that he did commit these molestations before he's arrested, and then two, he must be tried fairly. Otherwise, this is just not fair. So yeah, that's what I think of these protests. I might appear to have a negative opinion, and that's I do mainly, but I don't disrespect people's right to protest. I only expect them to protest peacefully. Now, it might be said that, well, the wrestlers' protests have been peaceful, which is true, but they have also been agitating against uh, the law when Section 144, which is a law that of the IPC, which prevents large assemblies from gathering in public. They broke that law when it was imposed. And so, yeah, when that happens, I don't support the protesters. They have to follow the law. They can't break the law whenever they want. They can protest, but within the limits of the law. And yeah, that's where I stand on this. Please share your thoughts on the video in the comment section. If you want to see other videos about Indian nationalism in general, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see the sources I use for this video, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.